A very good afternoon to all, and I'm Sering Dundup, IT and Multimedia Coordinator of Tibet House, and this will be our fourth and final session of the first day of our two-day conference. And for this session, we have Venerable Geshe Dobje Jamdula and Dr. Nivedita Chili, and I would request them to come on the stage. Dr. Nivedita Chili is a mental health professional with diverse experience across 2 decades in a variety of organizations. In her career, she has not only provided care in acute health setting and counseling centers, but has also worked for suicide prevention and disaster relief. And whenever Geshe Dobje Jamdula, I don't think we need any introduction. We are well aware. And so I would request, without wasting much time, I would request whenever Geshe Dobje Jamdula to chair the session. Thank you.
Thank you, Situla, the moderator. Now, for this session, we have Dr. Nivedita. And so basically, what I'd like to say a little bit about Dr. Nivedita is that she did her PhD in Western psychology. And later on, she was also trained under the Miss Ashaji and Mr. Zubinji as a part of the Pali, the Buddhist studies, the Buddhist psychology under Pali department. And then the last 3 years, we know each other so well. And just for information, that why we requested Dr. Nivedita to come here to make a presentation is that while we make the presentations or we teach on Buddhist psychology, but Dr. Nivedita is coming from a very different background from Western psychology and having learned Buddhist psychology, and could see the blend of these two in the clinical applications. And there she realized that the Buddhist psychology is of extreme benefit to the people, and she feels the need that this information, this knowledge of the Buddhist psychology must be imparted to the wider audience as much as possible. So with this in mind, just for information, Dr. Nivedita started 3 courses on Buddhist psychology, and 2 in Mumbai and 1 in Chennai. And because of having seen, me personally, having known her from her presentation and so forth, how very effective and touching, transformative the courses are. So I personally, along with the members of Ngari Gazeling Center in Assam, made a request to her to come to Assam to explore the possibility for setting up the same course in Assam. And we did that last year. And then the next thing was we were exploring if the same can be done in Bangalore. So let's see how it goes. So the point is that in Chennai, where she started the program on the Buddhist psychology, in a the westernized version, the video presentation at a course is very popular. So popular that I felt that the people in Bangalore can really benefit a lot from this. So this is my personal aspiration, and of course my personal what I could see. And in Chennai, her program was so popular to the extent that it's more like a very interesting anecdote that on the last day, the convocation ceremony, on the convocation ceremony, she invited the former Chief Justice of Chennai to be the chief guest. And a former Chief Justice, just seeing how this program was going there, the chief guest, she became the next year's diploma course student of Dr. Niveditaji. Okay, so we are so happy that we have Dr. Niveditaji and her knowledge, the clarity, and blend with her warm-heartedness. This is so beautiful. Okay, so I will hand over to Dr. Niveditaji, and stage is yours. Please welcome Dr. Niveditaji.
Better? Okay. Does this work? I'm technologically mildly challenged. Perfect. Thank you very much, Geshe-la, for that warm introduction. Good evening to all of you. It's been a long day. I'll try and keep it brief. But first, let me express my deepest gratitude to all three organizing institutions. The presenters today have been fantastic, and it feels like such a precious privilege to be here, to be able to soak all of this in this beautiful city of Bangalore. So deep gratitude. Also, I'd like to express deep gratitude to my teachers, because in the absence of the teacher, I don't think I would be here with much to express. If there is anything good that you hear from the presentation, please know that has come from the teaching. If you hear something which is not so good, please know that has come from my error in understanding, and kindly don't give that as part of the teaching, because it isn't. I must say that, when I was coming in for this conference on quantum physics and mind and brain and Buddhist philosophy, the idea of trying to understand how these merge and come together was something which has been playing on my mind for several weeks now. And I want to draw attention to a few things that some of the speakers have said. When we started with Dr. Usha Devi in the morning, where she spoke about the transition from quantum physics to classical physics, it's an interesting space where things are unpredictable, but then they move into a certain zone of seeming predictability. Or when Dr. Ravi spoke about the quantum collapse, so saying that many possibilities are there, but suddenly when we go into decision making, all of those potentials collapse into one definite situation. When Dr. Pranchu mentioned the category of samsara is the category of nirvana, which is in some way what this sweet little Buddha doodle illustrates as well, I think entanglement was such a key learning, and I could find new triggers going off in my brain, because while entanglement, as discussed both by Professor Ujjwal as well as Professor Shaji, was true on a quantum level, it was not difficult to imagine it in a social systems as well. For example, if I'm sitting here in Bangalore and being angry, is it easy to understand how my husband who's in Bombay might get some of that anger? Very non-local, but very practical, how transitions could happen in terms of non-locality, and being able to understand it perhaps also as socials, the same similarities between what is happening on a teeny tiny micro level to what is happening at a social systemic level. I have one question. How many mental health practitioners are here? 1, 2? Okay, so then let me just quickly, I like to make sure we're all on the same page. The idea of psychology is not a new word. Most of us are familiar with it, yes? Okay, lovely. So what we mean by psychology is nothing very complicated, just the study of mind and its functions. The course that Geshe-la was very kindly talking about is a course on applied psychology. What we mean by applied psychology is really using those principles to solve problems. So it would be the difference between, let's say, knowing the parts of a car and being able to use that knowledge when your car breaks down. So the idea of recognizing this is really what we mean by application. And when we are trying to apply, we must question what kind of groups are we applying with and what kind of aspiration are we making. With this course, the aspiration has really been, what His Holiness had mentioned in a quantum physics conference in 2015, that most of the difficulty and sad situations we have in the world today are man-made. And therefore, perhaps instead of simply resorting to prayer, we must also come up with solutions to start resolving this. And it is really with that aspiration my teachers, Asha, started the course in Pune University under the guidance of her teachers and Geshe-la. And it is really with all of this that we're aspiring and hoping that this course starts building us and allowing us to find new ways to be happy. Because we should not only try to repair the car which has broken down, but we should try to see, is it running at its best? Is it running in a manner which is environmentally friendly? Is it running in a manner which is at peak efficiency? And so on and so forth. The idea of looking at quantum physics, Buddhist philosophy, and then wondering what is this Nivedita going to talk about with applied psychology, I thought we should address that. But I'm going to address that with a story because I really like stories. And this is a very sweet Zen story. So there is a Zen student who has, we all understand the word Zen? Okay. So there's a Zen student who has studied under many teachers and many masters, and now he's beginning to feel quite chuffed about himself and feeling quite good about himself. Now he was fortunate enough to walk into the house of this really wise teacher. This teacher is sitting in his house, smoking a long bamboo pipe, and the student enters. And very desirous to show his attainment, he says, the mind, the Buddha, and sentient beings, after all, do not truly exist. The real nature of phenomena is emptiness. There is no realization, there is no delusion, there is no sage, there is no mediocrity. There is no giving, and there is nothing to be received. The teacher suddenly moves in the front, grabs his bamboo pipe and whacks the student. And the student reacts with great anger. And then the teacher very calmly says, if nothing exists, where did the anger come from? So really, we hear concepts like emptiness, we hear concepts like probabilities, we hear concepts like collapse of wave function. We must stop to also ask, perhaps, what does it mean for us in our daily life, for you and me, where we go about catching buses and going to work and making lunch and packing food and taking care of each other, and really coming back into saying, can these merge in a manner which is going to help us improve well-being, which is going to help us decrease suffering? To really start recognizing simply listening and having wow moments like we all had today are perhaps not enough. And maybe we all need to go back, contemplate, reflect, so that we're able to bring it more and more into our daily practice, so that we refine not just our behavior, which I certainly hope we all do, but also our thoughts and our speech. And our thoughts and our speech, I think, become the hardest, because with mind, nobody gets to see what you're really thinking, no? So refinement, motivation, sometimes a little iffy. So to kind of use all of this really, and so that we're able to benefit more and more people. So my work is really in the mental health field. I work with people who are experiencing high degree of distress, suicidal, depressed, anxiety, relationship issues. So if I have to talk about it in terms of well-being, can I say you and I are doing okay right now? Yes, so let's say there is, for lack of a better phrase, some kind of average, regular, normative state of well-being, which most of us are in most of the time. The clients I work with are much more, are not in that space at all. They're perhaps a little lower. They're experiencing high degrees of distress. Now, if we start bringing in quantum probabilities, we could be anywhere on this spectrum, and the idea is to perhaps aim for something higher, because there's something which is holding us back into this normative range, or perhaps in a distress range, and we want to be able to move to kind of see, can we increase our scope of well-being? Can we start being as happy as possible? And the idea of really recognizing that perhaps can we eliminate suffering, not just for ourselves, but also for everybody else. It was with that hope that we started the first batch at Mumbai in 2017. This course runs as a 6-month part-time course. So we keep it open so that it's possible for professionals to attend. We've typically had a mixed group where we've had counselors, mental health professionals, educators, special educators, different kinds of healers, doctors coming in. 2018, we ran the second course. Similarly, we had a very diverse group. We also have people from corporates, lawyers, pharmacists, artists, homemakers who all come in. 2019, the batch is currently on, and we will end in another 2 months. In 2018, we were very, very fortunate to tie up with a beautiful organization called the Banyan in Chennai. Some of you may be familiar with it. They work in the area of mental health, and they run an organization called the Banyan Academy for Leadership in Mental Health. We partnered with them to offer the course in Chennai. Actually, one of our students is right here. Pramod, you can wave. In addition to, we finished the second batch just last month. This was the certification ceremony from last month, and the third batch is scheduled to begin in June. What we offer with the course, I think we are at a state where religion seems to be causing some amount, unfortunately, of discomfort, and there's great amount of turmoil at the name. But I'm going to borrow words of my teacher, saying it may not be necessary to aspire to be Buddhist, but we all can definitely aspire to be a Buddha. The idea of recognizing that somebody who saw suffering, who recognized the suffering can come to an end or should come to an end, committed to finding that path, found not only the cause of suffering, but also found a path to end it, and then came back to teach, which is the greatest act of compassion. The idea of bringing that back. So what we want is really to hold on to that large-hearted aspiration of saying, can we bring benefit to as many people as possible? And it is with that we draw inspiration. Buddha as a philosopher, as a psychologist, as a spiritual advisor, as a teacher. And the course is located in trying to bring those principles, which were 2,500 years old, with a direct application today. Because in many ways it doesn't require change. Perhaps the way we talk about it changes because our language has changed. The course is really held with the framework of the Four Noble Truths. And we use the first semester to really explore suffering and the causes of suffering. I've also been very lucky to have Geshe-la already talk about some parts of Buddhist philosophy, and then Pooja, of course, to elaborate on it. The idea of recognizing, first of all, what do we mean by suffering? Can we recognize causes of suffering? Can we start seeing how our suffering comes from our action? For example, if I say, oh my God, I'm so nervous to come on stage and speak, do we all have experiences of anxiety? Yes. Where does that come from? It's coming from our actions in terms of thoughts which are running through our head. If you explore further, you find that your actions are coming from what we call afflictive emotions of either deep attachment to the idea of, oh my God, I should do well, or deep aversion to the fact that if this stock bombs, then what is going to happen? The idea of being able to recognize that this afflictive emotions come from huge amount of fabrication in our head on what we value and what we undervalue, which actually is coming from great, great ignorance. Now, ignorance, of course, is a word that many of us may not like. We've got PhDs and all of this. How could we be ignorant? But what we mean by ignorance is really just the idea of saying we don't see things for what they really are, which is what we've heard repeatedly in all our presentations today. The idea of us imposing value on something which is really which we don't see for its natural state. And then we presume that what we are seeing is absolute truth. And because we operate from that presumption, it leads to a great amount of suffering. So really the first few months are built on understanding this view, understanding dependent origination, understanding how that causes suffering, understanding relativity of our perception, and how is it that we can kind of move forward from that space. But you know, the difficult part about our little mind, little or not, I don't know, but the difficult part is habit. How many of us have tried to break a habit? Was it easy? Not at all. So painful. Most of the time we are very resistant to change because we believe that, and you can't in some ways understand that our habits have gotten created over a period of time. They came up because we thought this is what is going to work best. And maybe those habits did work best for you at some point of time, but perhaps now that the causes and conditions have changed, it's time to tweak our habits. But we're so resistant, sometimes we even get angry. So the first part of the course is also trying to develop what we call pliancy of the mind, just making the mind a little bit more flexible. And we use so the second, which builds into the second part of the course, where we use several methods. And I think, again, great fortune of having such wonderful teachers who've used a range of skillful methods to teach us, which we can bring back into the course. The idea of bringing in bodhicitta and paramitas and really to use these as mind training tools, because really we need to train our mind. It's not called the monkey mind in Buddhism for nothing. For those of us who have not studied Buddhism, well, your mind is called monkey mind. So is mine and so is everybody else's. And the reason it's a monkey mind, because everybody has seen a monkey. Hopefully not only in the zoo, but the idea of our mind jumps from one idea to the other idea. So if you were thinking, oh, I'm sleepy, what time's my flight? And then your mind has jumped to saying, will there be traffic? Then your mind has jumped to saying, what's the speaker saying? This is the nature of our mind repeatedly. Being able to train the mind to hold it where we want to hold it, to make it move when we want to make it move, is a critical skill that we try to develop. Let's do a small little exercise to give you a glimpse of this. What do you see? A mirror? Okay, good. Looks like a black thing. But we'll call it a mirror for now. I want you to take a moment or two. Think about adjectives you give yourself. We all see ourselves in a certain way, yes? It could be physical attributes, good. I'm fat, tall, thin, dark, short. Whatever physical attributes you give yourself, it could be other attributes about qualities. I'm introverted, I'm shy, I'm extroverted, enthusiastic, adventurous, all of these. Can you take a moment to think about one or two? Lovely. I'm presuming you've all done it. It's what I do in class when I don't want to check. This is a very sweet website. Of course, there is some stereotypes mentioned here, but this was, I think, they've put up maps according to different people's perspectives. And it's really quite funny. Some of them are mildly controversial. I thought the Egyptians would probably be least controversial. The idea of saying all of us see, there's also a map of how North Indians see South Indians and how South Indians see the North Indians and so on. The idea of recognizing we all have a worldview. Now, when I say how do you see the world, I don't mean just the world or the planet we live in. It could be any other. So for instance, if I ask you, how do you see the traffic policeman? And you may say, oh, I see him as okay. But then I say, what about a group of traffic policemen? And if you're still not able to push your mind, imagine this. Your child is going to, let's say, fill up a college form for some course. What are you going to tell her about the office? Carry all the documents, make sure you've got photocopies, because you know how these administrative people are. We've got views about groups of people. We've got views. It doesn't make it good or bad. We've been using this ability to think about groups of people to navigate through our life. So really stop and ask yourself, how do you see others? Are they good? Are people in general good? bad, trustworthy? Should you trust in God? Should you trust in God? But as they say, lock your car and lock your cupboard when you leave the house. Take a moment or two and reflect. So why does this matter? This matters because we have stories. We all think in stories. We have stories about ourselves. We have stories about the world. We have stories about ourselves in the world. And we are constantly operating like these stories were absolute, solid, fixed, independent, whole stories which are completely true in themselves. And if anything, today's takeaway should be that maybe not so fixed. Maybe it has some wriggle room. And that's really what we would want you to explore. Because based on these stories, keep connecting this back to quantum physics, to Buddhist thought, what Geshe-la separated as relative truth and ultimate truth. What Pooja, who was articulating what Geshe-la said, emptiness of objectivity of the object is the objectivity of the object. Do you want to say that with me? Emptiness of objectivity of the object is the objectivity of the object. What does this really mean? It sounds like, okay, she made us say something. Well, now, what it means is this: when you are at a traffic light getting really angry, to recognize that it is not the traffic, something inherently about the traffic which makes you angry. It is something about you. The anger is not coming from the traffic light. Let's use a sweeter example. How many of you like ice cream? Okay, some. Wow, not so many. Let's say, okay, wonderful, many more. All right, maybe they were shy. No, not that there is any ice cream offer. Imagine if just now somebody walked in with ice cream. How are you going to feel? Nice, great, wow, ice cream. You eat the first one. What is the experience like? Fantastic. Yes, favorite flavor, perfectly served. Now they see how much you're enjoying the ice cream, and these organizers are very generous, loving people, so they come with a second ice cream. Now how are you feeling? Nice, okay. Now you finished your second ice cream. Now they've come with the third one. Now how are you feeling? Now you start saying no more vehemently. If the joy of the ice cream was in the ice cream itself, should it have dropped from the first, second, and third ice cream? Should it? To start recognizing these as stories we're telling ourselves based on how we perceive it, and our perception depends on where we are, and really it is changing from moment to moment. And we must start recognizing when we get angry at people, when we get angry at things. This is what we need to work on. It's reassuring and very comfortable to stay with our stories because it's comfortable, we know where it goes. But frankly, when we start this path, it's a little inconvenient initially. But the idea is to shift our level of well-being from the average, regular, normative zone that we are occupying to perhaps aim for much higher. So really what the Course helps us do is really start examining our thoughts, our responses, our patterns. We start seeing that all of this to a large extent is not coming from the world outside, but really coming from us. And because of that, we're able to kind of not just listen, but listen, contemplate, and slowly begin to act along that path. And act in a manner where we are able to work for the benefit of other people. Because one of the core problems is this I, me, my that we've got inherent to everything that we're doing. And we want to start recognizing one of the ways in which we can start working is really towards the benefit of others as we practice bodhicitta, as we practice paramitas. So really, as a small, this is broadly what we want to do. Even when we start with meditation, I think one of the things that students have repeatedly talked about is the attitude that we sit with. Even that is such a huge learning because we've learned to compete. We've learned to be so harsh and critical with ourselves. But here, when you sit with a warm friendliness towards yourself, recognizing that I have a monkey mind and it is going to run. I don't now need to get angry that I have this monkey mind and add more layers to it. I can simply say, monkey mind has run. Let me gently bring it back. Oh, it has run again. Okay, gently bring it back. That itself can be so tremendously learned. So the idea of recognizing the attitude that we hold throughout this course, we also are very honest with ourselves because, we've learned, I think, in the garb of politeness, we've sometimes learned to kind of hide true intention and really making our intentions more evident. So the view helps in recognizing the causes and conditions which have contributed to our existing ways of being, while the practice helps us to move closer in line with the way things really are, so that we're just a little more free of the old stories that we told ourselves, which perhaps were limited and which perhaps held us back. I'm shy, so I won't speak in class, or I won't take up opportunities, or whatever other ways that the stories have kind of held us back. So this was a sweet quantum Buddha image that I found, which I thought was absolutely incredible. If there has been any benefit that comes out of the talk or the teachings, please for it to be dedicated really for the all sentient beings, and really in the hope that you all move towards greater amount of happiness and lesser amounts of suffering continuously. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Nivedanaji. Particularly, we see that what we've been learning from the technical Buddhist philosophy, the psychology and philosophy, Dr. Nivedanaji's presentation, formulation of these, as you can see, that there's originality there, and then plus the application part for the well-being. And in fact, I'm sure many of the senior ones, as well as particularly the monastics, you must be meeting with your friends, and it is my job in the office, more than my office work, is to meet with people. And there I see that there are many young people, elders, and mostly youngsters. They have all their personal problems. And the problems, only when we share, Dr. Nivedanaji, how she presented a part of these to these people, they feel such a healing. And then listening to Dr. Nivedanaji for the last 2-3 years, to her course, to her presentation in the conferences, I see that this is exactly what is required. And I feel so happy that as the way we expected, her courses, they're really pulling and also attract lots of people, very standard people, and it becomes very popular. So hopefully that her course, although I envisioned that Chorsumling would be a very wonderful spot where this course can be introduced, so that many more people will get the opportunity to meet with the teachers there in Chorsumling. But so what is happening now is not really certain. So therefore, we are exploring other possibilities in other venues if the same course can be initiated. And it is my personal request that I made to Dr. Nivedanaji that she must spread her courses in the various places in India and abroad. Okay, so with this in mind, I'd like to invite maybe 2 questions if you have. The none over here. The mic. No, you need this. The none. If possible, new hands. Yes.
Thank you so much. First, I'd like to thank everybody. This has been an extraordinary day, and I feel very blessed to be here and to listen to all of you and to learn from all of you. My question for you is because I think something that's very pervasive, I've when I'm not sort of doing sort of more monastic duties, I have worked as a chaplain in the U.S. With dying people. And my question actually relates more to the youth that I encounter. And it seems to me like there's a massive amount of a sense of meaninglessness among a lot of youth. And I'd like to know how you personally address individuals who are struggling with a crisis of meaning. I asked this in connection partly because I read an article that suicidality is not so much related to depression as it is to a crisis of meaning. And I'd love to hear what are your first steps working with a person who presents themselves to you who's in that sort of crisis? Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So to start with, there is no fixed method because really no one kind of shape or size fits all. The primary aim would initially, of course, be to provide comfort and reassurance, because when you have people coming to you in distress, that really becomes step one. And in this building of relationship, it is also then necessary to start exploring more about multiple causes and conditions. I think one of the biggest takeaways from me from Buddhist psychology, which I think applies to mental health as we've studied it earlier, is this concept of a single cause being a myth. To pick up as one cause and say this is the problem, I feel that sometimes creates an issue and we become a little biased and lopsided. Having said that, I do believe that it is critical for most of us to start looking for meaning, because happiness, I don't think is, we chase happiness directly, but what we end up actually doing is chasing pleasure. And instead, perhaps when we look for meaning, happiness comes as a byproduct. The idea of being able to find and explore that correlationship between meaning for their own life and how we can kind of help co-create it becomes the process that we would possibly embark on.
Very good evening. So my name is Pradeep. So I have one question. That is, I have now in a known people, also unknown people. A lot of people are going through some sort of mental disturbance, and the severity level, if it goes higher, then they are trying to commit suicide. So because I had one known person, he was trying to commit suicide, but I could not help him much because there are a lot of ways to come out of it, like meditation, and but still I could not help him. So what is the advice from your end to help out those people?
Thank you, and I'm sorry to hear about your friend. I do feel that mental health, frankly, we're in a state right now where suicide rates are alarmingly high, and mental health is also something which really should be taken up in a more immediate way as an issue. I do feel what happens as mental health professionals, and in some ways this connects back with why I started exploring Indian traditions and Buddhist psychology in particular, is when we work as mental health professionals, we are often seeing people after trauma has occurred, after there is a problem. So imagine this, there is a ditch, okay? And people are walking, some people skip the ditch, some people fall into the ditch, but they're unharmed. But many people get injured in the ditch. And as mental health professionals, we are sitting at the other end of the ditch. When people come out, we're saying, here, let me take care of your wound. Of course, that is important. Not that this is not important, but it's also coming from a very curative, rehabilitative way. I sometimes wonder if that's the only way to address mental health. If it is possible even for us to come in front of the ditch, if nothing else, just hold a board saying ditch ahead. Will that help? The idea of preventive and promotive care is something which we all need to think about. And preventive and promotive care need not be done by counselors and psychiatrists. It can be done by each and every one of us. It can be done by just holding space for people to be. Most of us are being trained to compete for really imaginary phenomena. All of our children are being told you should come first, second, third. But what is first, second, third? Like Pooja said, you become first when there is a second. You become second when there is a first and a third. Otherwise, it has no meaning. And even if you have a first or a second or a third in your class, what does that really mean when you look at all the other divisions? Because most of our schools don't have just one division. There is A, B, C, D, going up to H and I. What does it really mean? And the amount of pressure we're all constantly creating, you look at it for us, promotions. I mean, it's easy to look at the school kids and say, yes, it's very stressful. But you and I face similar stresses, whether it is promotion, whether it is job raise, whether it is who gets what project. We're constantly in the state of competition, and that's constantly creating stress. The idea of recognizing, is it possible for each and every one of us to start seeing that we can hold space for each other. But first, we must feel okay. So the idea of starting care, I feel, must really start with self, because otherwise we are also often projecting our needs on others. And then sometimes, for example, in counseling, we talk about, are you helping someone because they need help or because you want to feel needed? And these becomes questions that, so the idea of making sure we work on self constantly is the first thing which I feel all of us should do. The second thing which I feel we should do is holding space for each other. So even when I hold space for myself to say I need to take care of myself, it should be done with the aspiration that I should be able to now benefit somebody else with greater strength and greater capability.
In fact, nothing really to add. So to put it from a different angle. So this is a very serious question. In fact, I confronted with several individuals who were trying to help people who were trying to commit suicide. A very serious matter. So this is where, these conferences, and then eventually, for example, say like in Bengaluru, you have the Chauvar Swimming Center. So these are so important. It's not just that there's a conference there, I registered, okay, wow, it's amazing. This professor gave such talk. That's not the point. So these are like the sparks, or like the lightning. The lightning, from the lightning you should be able to identify very quickly, identify where to go, and from there where to learn these things. The point is that it's all psychology. Say there's somebody where if one of us is thinking of committing suicide, I'm sure that you will not be here. The fact that you don't have this sense of the severe unpleasant feeling, because you don't have that, a normal or pleasant feeling. So you come here just with the mere prospect of being a part of this conference, there's a pleasant feeling coming in you. So suicide means pleasant feeling is remotely there, very far away. So the painful experience, corrosive feelings coming. And many people think that this is just your thinking, he cannot think properly, she cannot think properly. It's not like that. When this unpleasant feeling, the degree of that unpleasant feeling comes, nobody can really, everybody is bound to go through this experience of wanting to commit suicide. So therefore, this is not at all an easy thing. So all of us, we are bound to go through this state ourselves, or we are bound to meet with other people who you love, and yet going through such a state. So therefore, the way Dr. Niveditaji advised is so important that we have to prepare ourselves from right now. that we don't go through this state ourselves in the future, and that we are ready to help somebody. How to help? It's about the psychology. So it's about how the mind works. The mind, when this very corrosive, heavy feeling comes in, invariably, nobody wants to be in this heavy, corrosive feeling. So what is the easiest way? Commit suicide. So this is where we need this study of psychology. So the Dr. Nivedita's program it plays a very important role. Say this unpleasant feeling, how does it come into being? We learned about dependent origination, 3 levels of dependent origination. How this unpleasant feeling comes into being? If suddenly by miracle, if that unpleasant feeling is reversed, and the pleasant feeling is created, the person will start singing instead of saying that I'm going to commit suicide. So how to create this pleasant feeling? I'll just give you one of my personal anecdote in this regard, because it's a very serious question. When I was in class 11, who was very enthusiastic following physics, and most of the conference developers organizers, when I'm there as the director, is on physics. Okay, so as a very enthusiastic physics student in class 11, what happened was that all best of my friends, school time friends, meaning from the junior class till high school, all the friends, the boys, they start to run away from me. They become so friendly, harmonious, and then they start to go away from me in ways of isolating me. And then what happened was that this young boy, just age 16, 17, he was still feeling so low. In my study, I'm doing so good in my studies. Why my friends are isolating me now? Okay, so look, very unpleasant feeling is coming. So why I'm sharing this anecdote, particularly this question, coming from the gentleman, is a very serious question. So this unpleasant feeling is coming from where? This is where we have to explore. So this unpleasant feeling is coming because of the cognitive thought process that I am being isolated by my best of my friends. So this cognitive thought process that drills in, or that brings in, that retrieves a very unpleasant feeling. That unpleasant feeling makes you feel so hopeless and feel so demoralized. In worst cases, one will commit suicide. So now, what I did was luckily, one of my teachers, I'm so lucky that he's a brilliant psychologist, Buddhist psychologist, and a philosopher, so well trained in logic. I went to my teacher and then told him, he was the hostel warden. Then I narrated this anecdote. So this is what has happened. All my friends, so many years, 5 years, 10 years friends, even they are isolated, they start to isolate me. They're paying amongst themselves. Then what he said that, Dorji, don't feel demoralized. Don't feel painful. You should be feeling proud of yourself. I said, why? What is there to feel proud of? So I'm being isolated. Everybody is going to one side. I'm left alone. No. You should feel so grateful to them. These young boys, they want to go to say they drink alcohol. They want to do smoking. They want to go for drugs, and they know that you're not going to do that. So therefore, they feel ashamed. They want to go away from you. So in a way, they want to keep you clean. Wow, that's amazing. This, what an honor, what a compliment. So the next day, I went to the school. My mind was so light. Instead of feeling angry and feeling demoralized, I felt so happy to see my friends. They're being so kind. They did not drag me into smoking, alcohol, drugs, and so forth. Wow, it's so kind of them not to drag me into these bad habits. I'm so happy. So thank you. So the feeling of the heaviness being dragged down, bogged down with such a, the unpleasant feeling. that instantly change because the change in the cognitive thought process. So therefore, the ability, the skill to change the cognitive thought process of the other person, which in turn will change the feeling, that is so crucial, that is so important, and that you can learn extremely meticulously. You can learn it from Buddhist psychology. For that, we need a number of years of training. And for example, say here, Bangalore, you are very fortunate that you have a center here. Many places, they don't have a center. And luckily in Mumbai, we have now done to Nivedhariji the last 3 years. Because of this, now this is happening there. Otherwise, in Mumbai, I've been going there for all these many years, but there's no really solid ground there where to learn all these things. So therefore, one of the purpose why we convene this conference is to make sure that people who crave for such a knowledge, people who crave to apply these, want to learn this knowledge and then apply this knowledge to the day-to-day life, to help yourself, to help others. So these people should see the ocean of knowledge. Where is knowledge available? To let them, to pinpoint to the source of knowledge, we convene this conference to introduce Chokro Sumding to the public of Bangalore. So this whole purpose. So therefore, I would say that if these, no doubt, everyone, we are going through these, in some way or the other, we are going through some problems, and then it would be wonderful to be connected with children. Just go there. Just go there. Go there and then sit by yourself, and then most of the times teachers are there. Teachers will give you teachings, how to control emotions, how to change the cognitive thought process so that your feelings will be changed. Then it will make you feel so light, and then your whole environment will change. Your families will be, you will feel so happy. So all these things, the provision is there. Chokro Sumding is there here. Chokro Sumding is the centers here. Why not we make use of that? So this is my suggestion, that there is a source here. You can go to meet with these teachers there in the center there. So this is my aspiration, that the people of the Bangalore can be benefited. Thank you so much, Dr. Nivedhariji. Thank you so much for a wonderful presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Geshe-la and Dr. Nivedhariji, for an interesting and enlightening session. And now I would request the Venerable Geshe-la to felicitate Dr. Nivedhariji with a souvenir and a kata. With this, we have come to the end of our first day of 2-day conference, and I would like to thank all the speakers and all the audience. All the knowledge and wisdom-seeking audience. Without you, this wouldn't be such a successful conference, and I'm sure that you have learned a lot from our erudite speakers. So, and finally, a small reminder that tomorrow's session will start at 10 o'clock, and that would be 5th session on the concept of subtlety, elementary particles, and human cognition. And so I would request everyone to be there as early as possible. Thank you, and see you again.